So good evening, everybody. You're very, very welcome to this evening's webinar. Let's Talk Equine. This is the 11th in the series. Your attendance tonight is very much appreciated. To begin, some housekeeping, just to say that this webinar is being recorded, and the intention is to make the recording available on www.teagasc.ie/Let's Talk Equine. Attendees, of course, can submit your questions using the Q&A function that is at the bottom of your screen. For those who are with us for the first time, you're welcome. I just want to note that I cannot respond to the raise a hand function. So if you wish to submit questions, please do so using the Q&A tab. The topic, of course, this evening is the movement of equines between Ireland and the UK and how this has been impacted by Brexit. My thanks, first of all, to all of those who submitted questions, comments and suggestions in advance, as these were passed along to both departments and were indeed most helpful in preparing their presentations for tonight. Time is finite this evening during this webinar, so we endeavour to address as many of the main themes raised in the pre-submitted questions as possible, and both departments will follow up with further information notes in the coming days. It has got to be acknowledged that it is still very, very early stages in terms of the requirements which took effect since January 1st. Government departments are working with stakeholder organisations to find solutions and clarity where that's still required. There are high-level negotiations still underway, so please do bear this in mind, as not every aspect on which questions were submitted can be answered just right now. Further future follow-up will be required for some aspects, and it is an evolving situation. Panellists, of course, recognise the value of both the sport horse and thoroughbred sectors, making an estimated contribution of 816 million and 1.8 billion respectively. And of course, both sectors have been exceptionally reliant on the ease of movement of equines to, from and through the UK. Understandably, there are tangible concerns in the sector for the maintenance of trade at all levels of the market, and the movement of even those high health status horses for the purpose of sport with its reciprocal economic activity has become much more challenging in recent weeks. Time delays, bureaucracy, they're part of it, but also the very significant increases in costs that now are being incurred. I am joined this evening by three panellists. So we have Catherine Lawler, Superintending Veterinary Officer of the Animal Health Division in the Department of Agriculture, Food and Marine. You're welcome, Catherine.
Thank you.
Celine O Neill, Principal Officer, Brexit Policy and Customs Legislation Branch with the Customs Division of Revenue. You're also very welcome, Celine. And Humphrey O Sullivan, Assistant Principal Officer, VAT Interpretation Branch, Indirect Taxes Policy and Legislation Division in Revenue. Not a mouthful at all, Humphrey. Yeah. So you also are very welcome. Catherine, Celine and Humphrey are here to help explain some of the complexities and rules which became the new reality on January 1st, 2021. I do want to acknowledge each panellist's willingness to be here and participate to help communicate and explain the newly enforced systems of export and import criteria, including health certs, transport authorisations, customs and VAT implications. So without further ado or hang about, because I know the clock will push against us, I'm going to ask Celine and Humphrey to go on mute and cameras off for now. And Catherine, if you could start to share your presentation. You need to do that from screen 2, Catherine. Catherine, while you're doing that, Catherine and her colleagues are in daily communication with representative bodies within the sector, including transporters, and also engaged in higher level discussions representing the issues of stakeholders. And I suppose really, if we could say, seeking to problem solve within the very real constraints and challenges and complexities that exist. So Catherine, I'll let you work away with your presentation, and we'll reconvene when you're done.
Thank you, Wendy. I'd just like to confirm that you can see my screen and hear me.
I can see your screen, yes.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, everybody. I'd like to thank Teagasc and Wendy Conlon, their equine specialist, for inviting the Department of Agriculture, Food and the Marine to partake in this event tonight. We know that it's a challenging process managing equine movements now that we're in a new trading arrangement with the United Kingdom. For those of you who may not know why these controls are in place and why you can't move horses as you always did, whether you are a parent tonight looking at tonight's presentation who has a child with a pony who wants to go to Great Britain this summer on holidays, whether you're a professional show jumper bringing horses to events in Great Britain, whether you're moving horses to Great Britain and on to mainland Europe, new controls will apply to you. And this is because the tripartite agreement, which we enjoyed for many years, enabled horses to move between Ireland and Great Britain and from Great Britain to Ireland without the need for certification or customs controls. The situation has now changed because the UK has left the EU, and as such, each time you move a horse out of Ireland to Great Britain, you're leaving the EU to enter what's known as a third country, and each time you move horses from Great Britain to Ireland, you're moving horses from a third country into the EU. And that is why we have these new controls. So the questions we've received to date have been asking, what do I need to do to move horses to and from Great Britain? From the Department of Agriculture, Food and the Marine's point of view, the key points you need to know are that you must register with our department, and you also must register for the Trade Control and Export System, commonly known as TRACES. This is an EU system for tracing goods and animals moving between countries. If you are importing horses into Ireland, you must also register for the TRACES NT, which is a new technology and TRACES, a new system that's been developed and rolled out this year. We would suggest and recommend that you visit our Brexit page on our government website, and within that you'll find links to what you need to do if you wish to import or export horses into or out of Ireland to Great Britain. So what will you need to check before you travel? You firstly must check what are the requirements you need to comply with as a haulier transporting horses, both from a haulage point of view and from the animal welfare in transit point of view. There are requirements as an animal transporter that you must comply with, and I'll deal with those shortly. You also must check what does your driver have to comply with and those on board. For example, driver's licenses, any other permits they might need. And last week we got a short notice notification that for any drivers of haulage entering France, they must have a COVID test and they must have a result before they enter France. So with the evolving pandemic and many other requirements, it is really important that you check well in advance what the requirements are to travel to the different countries that you're planning to travel to and to travel to Great Britain. What are the animal health requirements? We'll discuss those later in my presentation. You will also have to consider other customs and VAT implications, and what are they? It's very important that you plan your route. The key to preparing for moving horses for both exports out of Ireland to GB and through GB to mainland Europe, and for bringing horses into Ireland, is to plan ahead your route and know what's required at each and every stage. So you will need to plan your route. For example, if you're heading from Ireland and you're planning to go to Dover to travel on to mainland Europe, you will need a Kent access permit, which you need to apply for if your vehicle is over 7.5 tons and you're intending exiting GB from Dover. You will need a permit to enter that area to allow you to move on to Dover and to ensure that your journey will go seamlessly. Border control posts are very important. Each border control post will have its own arrangements in terms of whether you need an appointment system, the notice you need to give them, what controls will apply when you arrive. Plan early, plan in advance, and you will then be prepared well for your journey. In terms of animal welfare, Many of you are already Type 2 authorised transporters. To move horses to Great Britain or to travel on through Great Britain to mainland Europe, you must now have your transporter authorisation issued by GB and vehicle approval completed by Great Britain. That's in addition to your EU issued transporter authorisation and vehicle approval. We are aware and we are getting feedback on a daily basis from operators, and we're engaging with the industry to ascertain, are they encountering any problems, are they encountering any difficulties, and to do everything we can to assist. We had been informed by operators that were finding it difficult to get appointments in Great Britain to secure early transport authorisation and vehicle approval. We've been informed this week by some of the operators that in fact, if you contact the UK authorities and to arrange your transporter authorisation, there is a fast track system for a higher fee. So if you need to get this authorisation and vehicle approval done more quickly, you can do so. There is a mechanism to do that. Certificates of competency are required by the drivers and handlers of the animals, and we would encourage you to contact the Animal Welfare Transport Team on the email I've given here for the Department of Agriculture, and the UK authorities for the Department of Environment, Food and Rural Affairs, the APHA, the Animal Plant and Health Agency, and they will assist you in managing and guiding you on how to secure authorisation in Great Britain. Vehicle approval, you must bring your vehicle to Great Britain to be approved, and any issues in relation to certificates of competency. We've received a number of queries in recent weeks in regard to what do I need to do to move horses to or from Great Britain. We're delighted to say that we worked very hard with our authorities in Department of Agriculture, Environment and Rural Affairs in Northern Ireland to secure, and we have signed a bipartite agreement. This means that if you're moving horses to Northern Ireland or from Northern Ireland to the Republic of Ireland, horses except those for slaughter, you will not, for those horses, you will not need certification and you will not need to pre-notify. If you are moving for horses, you will need health certification. So that's good news. It means and ensures free movement of horses except those for slaughter on the island of Ireland. Many of you tonight are wondering what you need to do to move horses to and from Great Britain. From the Department of Agriculture's point of view, you will have to comply with new animal transport requirements, as I've briefly mentioned, and you will also need an export health certificate. The certification in Ireland, the process that you will need to follow is that you will need to engage with a private veterinary practitioner who will examine your horse and will issue a certificate for each of your horses that are planning to travel to Great Britain. You need to engage early with the private veterinary practitioners if you're planning to move horses to ensure that they will be available to provide you with the inspection and the certification service that you need. Our teams in the regional veterinary offices of the Department of Agriculture, Food and the Marine in your local area will then assist you in providing the service you need to secure an export health certificate. How do you get this certificate? You need to contact your local regional veterinary office. We would ideally ask that you would give a minimum of 5 working days notice. This is to ensure that we can provide the service that you need and have the resources available that you need to ensure that you can get your certificate and travel on your journey on the ferry sailing of your choice. You need to submit your private veterinary practitioner certificate to our team in the regional veterinary office, and you also separately need to complete consignment details on traces. At the start of my presentation, I mentioned you need to be registered on traces, and you will need to input your consignment details into the traces system. If you don't feel that you can do that yourself, you may be able to use an operator who's familiar with traces to complete that system for you. What you do need to decide well in advance is who is responsible at each leg of the journey, whether you're using an agent or whether you're following all the controls yourself. The regional veterinary office will discuss with you the procedure for issuing certification, and they will issue you the signed, stamped health certificate, having checked your documentation and possibly having to check your horse as well before you travel. For registered horses being exported from Ireland to Great Britain, the certification must issue on the day of travel or the previous working day. So for example, if you're traveling on a Sunday or a Monday, we will be able to issue you that certification on a Friday, providing we have adequate notice. Do you have to pre-notify Great Britain that you're traveling with a horse to Great Britain? Yes, you do. This is a new procedure that you will have to follow. You must give advance notice to Great Britain on their import system known as IPAFS at a minimum 24 hours in advance of arrival in Great Britain and within 30 days. That system will assign a unique number which you must then include in the consignment details that you forward to the regional veterinary office, and this number must be included in the export health certificate. I would just like to add at this point that to engage with this import system, to register with the import system in Great Britain and to submit advance notice, you must use an operator based in Great Britain, be that somebody who's importing the horse or an agent who acts on your behalf. You cannot access this system from the EU. As an EU resident, you must use an operator who's registered in the UK on this system. Another point to add is that from January until the end of June, you can bring a horse into Great Britain via any point of entry. From the 1st of July, that will change, and you may only bring horses into Great Britain via a designated border control post. The UK government will in due course indicate where those border control posts will be in Great Britain. We don't have that information yet. What do you need to do if you're intending to bring horses to mainland Europe, travelling via the Great Britain land bridge, as many of you do now? We secured agreement with the UK authorities, and they have accepted that horses can transit across the land bridge to mainland Europe using the intra-trade health certificate or the commercial document known as a DOCOM, as you have been using in previous years. There will be no requirement for you to notify the import system in the UK. However, you will need to indicate on your tracer certificate the route that you are traveling. So you will see a dedicated section on the tracer certificate for route details, and you will need to indicate on that that you are transiting through a third country, and you select the United Kingdom. And you then are prompted to provide details from a drop-down box, your exit point from Ireland and your entry point into the EU. So for example, you would select as your exit point that you are departing from Dublin port and you are entering EU via Calais port. You must pre-notify the border control post that you will be arriving, and that, for example, if it's Calais, you need to let them know in advance. You need to clarify with them their inspection opening times. In Calais, we believe you must arrive between the hours of 8 AM and 6 PM, and they have a throughput, we believe, of 3 horses per hour. So the sooner you engage and the sooner you clarify with your border control post entry point, you will be better prepared for the journey. We know from a number of transporters in recent weeks, they have been communicating with us their concerns that a route they would have used traditionally from Harwich to the Netherlands has not been available to them. And I just want to give you an update this week. We've contacted our colleagues in Brussels, and I've also checked on the Port of Rotterdam's website, and there are plans well advanced to open up a border control post at the Port of Rotterdam for horses, and that should open very shortly. So I know that some of you tonight will be delighted to hear that, because it means another access route to mainland Europe, and that you possibly then won't have to travel to Dover with the inevitable delays that might arise on that route through Kent. In recent weeks, and we have been in active, ongoing, continuous communication with equine stakeholders and transporters to ascertain the issues that are arising and to try and to work with you all and to try and negotiate and support you through those processes and negotiate with the relevant authorities if needed. To move horses out of Ireland via Great Britain, as many of you do, to other third countries. For example, if you're taking a horse from Ireland to Dubai, Ireland to the States, you may wish to bring that horse to London and then fly from there to your end destination. That will not be the same process that you will have used traditionally. You will now have to obtain an export health certificate from Ireland to Great Britain and an export health certificate from Ireland to the end third country destination. To import horses from a third country to Ireland via Great Britain, you will need export certification from that third country to Ireland. This is the temporary arrangement agreed with the UK authorities last week, who will allow this for a 3-month period that you can bring horses in on that certificate intended for Ireland. In both cases, if you're exporting to Great Britain to move on to a third country, you must notify the IPAF system. And similarly, if you're importing from a third country into Ireland via Great Britain, you must notify the UK import system. This, like many aspects of Brexit, is fluid and evolving as we progress in the weeks and months ahead. So I would urge any of you that are intending to export horses via Great Britain outside of the EU or importing from outside the EU into Ireland via Great Britain to please contact us before you start to make your travel arrangements, as we are in active consultation with DEFRA, and these are very much evolving issues and the situation could change at any given day. There may be new developments. So please engage with us early and in good time before you plan any of these journeys. So you will need to, as I mentioned earlier, you will need export certification if you are importing horses from Great Britain. You will need an export health certificate and you will need an owner declaration for direct imports from Great Britain into Ireland. This is a new requirement. You won't have had to do this previously. Attached to that certification are various requirements in relation to disease testing and residency requirements. So if you are bringing in a temporary horse, unregistered, or if you're bringing in a horse that's unregistered and registered for temporary or permanent movements, the requirements will vary depending on the type of horse and for how long that horse is coming into Ireland. The testing that will be required may include equine infectious anemia blood testing and equine viral arteritis testing. There are a number of steps involved in this process, and the UK official veterinarian will be able to guide you through that process. The tests that are required have to be conducted in a laboratory approved by the UK authorities, and you need to plan ahead in good time. Depending on the type of movement and the type of horse, your horse may have to be resident in Great Britain for a minimum period of time, and there are different time frames within which you must have your test results available and the test completed. You must also have a valid identification document. If your horse has a passport and is not registered with an EU recognised stud book, you may also need to secure an additional identification document issued by the UK government, and your official veterinarian in Great Britain can advise you on that. The UK government has a list of approved official veterinarians who are approved to certify specific commodities for export from Great Britain to the EU. You would need to check that list to ascertain which official veterinarians will be available in the area that you wish to export your horses from, and whether they will be available to certify horses in particular. So again, the key is prepare in time, make contact early, ascertain the requirements. So a number of you in the last few weeks have contacted us to clarify what is the import process for horses coming into Ireland. Well, there are 4 border control posts approved for horses. We have Dublin Port, Rosslare Port, Dublin Airport and Shannon Airport. You must bring your horse into Ireland. If you're exporting from Great Britain, they may only enter Ireland via a border control post. And you must give our teams at the border control post a minimum of 24 hours notice of your arrival. For each consignment, you must send a notification via the Traces NT system that I mentioned earlier. So as I said at the start of the presentation, you must be registered for Traces for exports, and you must be registered for Traces NT for imports. In parallel, we would ask that you would notify the Department of Agriculture, Food and the Marines designated dedicated import portal, so that there's a two-way process of communication with our border control post team. When you complete the required steps on the Traces NT system, a document known as a Shed A will be created, and that is essential for you to enter our border control post. In addition, you must engage with customs and they will assign you a reference number. Only when those steps are completed are you permitted to enter the border control post. And I would just like to add at this point, with many of the steps that I've mentioned this evening, I'm dealing with the Department of Agriculture, Food and the Marines controls, but our colleagues in Revenue will also brief you tonight on the controls that you can expect from a customs and a VAT point of view. So you need to engage early and in good time with the relevant government departments to ensure that you are best prepared for exporting and importing into and out of Ireland. Just to mention at this point as well, that if you are moving horses on the landbridge, you will be coming into Dublin, for example, with an Intertrade health certificate. You will still need to engage with the Traces NT system. It is not solely for direct imports, it's also to be used for horses travelling on the land bridge from mainland Europe accompanied by an Intertrade health cert. There will be no fee for those horses coming in via the border control post for the checks that we complete. And most of those checks will be done remotely because you will submit your documents in advance of arrival. For direct imports from Great Britain into our border control posts, you will submit your documentation in advance, your supporting documentation, your certification, and when you arrive, all horses will be subject to an identity, a physical and a welfare check. If disease serological testing or any other testing is required, we will notify you of that. When you arrive at the border control post, you will be directed to drive towards the live animal border control post. There you will be directed into one of two areas. Unregistered equines will have to present at an ungulate inspection area, and registered equines will be diverted to the equidate inspection area. That's for registered horses. So there are two different areas depending at the category of horse that you're importing. And as I mentioned earlier, for export certs in Great Britain, the cert you will require will depend on the type of movement and the type of horse. What happens next? As I mentioned, if you are bringing horses as a direct import from Great Britain into Ireland via one of our border control posts, those horses will be subject to an identity, physical and welfare check. There may be disease testing required depending on the horse when it comes in, and if everything is in order and the horse is correctly identified and the documentation and certification is compliant, there should be no need for further testing. It's only in some cases it may be necessary. Your documents will be checked in advance, and there will be a check when you arrive of the final documentation. The original certificate must accompany the consignment to the border control post, and your Shed A is also a requirement at entry. The department will complete its checks, and our customs colleagues will also complete their checks and will indicate Both departments, when in agreement, will indicate that you're then free to proceed and to proceed with your journey. So how are you going to get started? How do you find the information? What do you need to do? Well, we will be sending and have already sent Wendy some links to key information, but we'll also be responding to the queries that you have sent in to Wendy in advance of this event. So you will get more information following this event. But in addition, you can go online onto the government website, gov.ie. On the tabs bar at the top of the screen, you'll see a series of tabs, and you click on the tab that's named Departments. From there, you click on the Department of Agriculture, Food and the Marine tab. And this will bring you to a page that covers all our Brexit requirements, and it's entitled Brexit and the Agri-Food Sector. So if you click on that link, it will then bring you to the next page, which guides you through trading in animals and animal products. So if you click on that link, it specifically is for trading in animals and animal products, it will bring you through the steps that you require to move commodities from Ireland to Great Britain. And it covers all of the commodities and different groups of live animals, including horses. If you notice at the top of that page, there's a little gold tab with a search icon. When I went into that this evening and I simply typed in Brexit and equine, it brought me to the dedicated Brexit notice and the trader notice that we have issued. And that is a very useful document for all equine operators who are moving horses from Ireland to Great Britain and from Great Britain to Ireland. You'll find an awful lot of information there. So what do you need to do next to get yourself started and to get moving? Visit our website, as I've just indicated. It has a vast amount of information there in relation to all commodities that are being exported from Ireland to Great Britain and being imported from Great Britain to Ireland. And on the horses section, we also cover landbridge movements. In the event that you don't find all the information that you need, or you would like to find more information, I would urge you to contact our email. The Department of Agriculture has a dedicated email, brexitcall@agriculture.gov.ie. It is manned full-time every day, and the team that are manning that email, once they receive your email, they will divert that to the relevant division. So today our team and I fielded a number of questions that came in from equine operators on that email. We are fully committed to assisting you and guiding you through the challenges you face in negotiating the new arrangements with the UK. We have a dedicated horse exports team in the Animal Health Division. We have a dedicated border control post team to assist you with queries on imports. We have a dedicated animal welfare team to assist you with the animal welfare transport requirements. And I would just like to add that in recent weeks, the department who have identified that there will be a lot of issues for operators with traces and the traces MT system, I'm delighted to say that the department has set up a formal traces unit with full-time expert staff, and that service is also available to you should you have any queries on traces. But if you filter your queries, if they come in through the Brexit call, regardless of the nature of your query, be it traces, animal transport, health certification, whatever it may be, that will be diverted to dedicated teams, and we will reply to you as quickly as possible with the information that you need. So I'd like to just thank you for your attention. And as I say, if there's anything you need at all, please contact us. The department is here to help, and we'd like to hear from you. Whether you are a parent tonight, as I said at the start, with a child with a pony who's traveling to England, whether you're a professional show jumper or a commercial transporter, no query is too minor. We are here to help, and we would like to hear from you. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Catherine. You might just end your screen share there. Great. Before we move on to the next presentation, I'm going to just take the opportunity to throw a couple of questions to you at this point. we all know that plans can change, and the apple cart gets upset from time to time. If somebody has intent of traveling from, let's say, from Ireland to the EU, France, Holland, whatever it is, and you're booked on and you're booked back, but on one or other of those legs of the journey, a ferry is cancelled, short notice, weather has changed, situation has changed. Can you use the original paperwork that was acquired to change that destination? What happens then?
Okay, so I'm assuming maybe, Wendy, what you're saying there is that if horses are booked to go from Ireland to France on a direct route, for example, Rosslare to Cherbourg, and for whatever reason, a change in plan, a change in arrangements, they're now going to perhaps travel from
a
Holyhead
a different exit,
from Dublin to Holyhead. If you are traveling with horses, for example, directly from Ireland to France, you may move on an intra-trade health cert or a commercial document, as I mentioned. That is a different process to the process I've described tonight for direct exports from Ireland to Great Britain. If your travel arrangements change and if your travel plans change, it is a different process. You will need to engage with us and secure an export certificate to Great Britain. But importantly, you will also need to let the UK system know that you are going to import horses into their country. And even more importantly, you will need to engage with customs and revenue. So there will be implications for travelling a different route if the route that you're changing to is Ireland direct to Great Britain. The direct route from Rosslare to Cherbourg is an intra-EC movement. And as I explained at the start, when you're moving from Ireland to Great Britain, you're now leaving the EU. So it's not an intra-EU movement, it's a different type of movement and different controls apply.
It's all complicated, isn't it? Another number of questions have come in across the idea that, if you're traveling for different purposes, whether it be for competition purposes or breeding purposes with registered animals to the UK, is there different paperwork required dependent on the reason of travel from your perspective?
Okay, well, as I mentioned in the presentation, if you're traveling from Great Britain to Ireland, there are different implications depending on the type of horse, the duration, the type of movement. The UK has made it slightly easier for us to get horses from the EU into GB. So the two main category of horses for horses moving directly from Ireland to GB are two categories of certificates. One is for temporary permanent movement of an unregistered horse. The second is for temporary permanent movement of a registered horse. The reason you're moving, whether it's a show, a competition, pony going on holidays with the family, doesn't matter. It's a straightforward cert. You're getting a certificate for a temporary permanent movement of a registered horse or a temporary permanent movement of an unregistered horse are the two that the Great Britain have identified. And we'd ask you to engage with our local regional veterinary office who will guide you on the certificate that you will need. But the nature of your movement and why you're moving won't affect us. It may, however, affect your customs and your VAT requirements, and that's where you need to talk to the Department of Revenue.
And that leads nicely into opening up into Celine and Humphrey's presentation now. So I'm going to let you out of the hot seat and let you turn yourself onto mute and video off for now, and I'm going to set up the screen share here for the others. 1 second now. Can you confirm, Celine and Humphrey, that you can see the presentation?
Yep, Wendy, I can see you perfectly, thanks.
Super. Look, you're really, really welcome, and I know the time is really going to push against us now, but there were loads and loads of questions in on this whole area of customs and tax, and a lot of confusion around it, and compounded, I think, as well by the lack of reference, I suppose, to animals, with everything really being referred to under goods. So I'll hand it over to both of you. You can prompt me when you want to move things along.
Yeah, thanks, Wendy. And I'm conscious that we're short on time, so I won't.
Yeah, but don't worry. I'll allow you a little bit more and to finish it out. Don't worry.
Thanks. I won't go into great detail on each one of these slides, but just to say on that first one there, the revenue.ie/Brexit link, any of the topics that we're talking about this evening, we did a series of about, I think there was about 15 webinars back in October. So there's detailed webinars available on each of the topics that we're going to cover this evening. So if somebody doesn't catch anything, don't overly worry about it. We'll be sharing these slides with you. We're hoping to put together a dedicated document on horses because, as you say, you probably won't find any reference to a horse on the revenue website. Unfortunately, we talk about goods. And look, customs is complex, so I don't expect people to catch everything I'm saying tonight. But we'll fly through it. If you go through onto the next slide, that just covers the basics of trading with Great Britain. And I choose that wording carefully because from a customs perspective, because of the protocol on Ireland and Northern Ireland, trade with the north or horses moving to the north or back down to the south, from a customs perspective, it's a non-event. It's not a customs event and there's no customs formality. So while there might be health certification requirements, there's nothing required from a customs perspective. So if you're moving your goods or your horse into Great Britain or through Great Britain, or you're bringing a horse from Great Britain into Ireland, there will be customs formalities for all of those things. You're going to need an economic operator's registration and identification number, an EORI number, and you need to apply for that on the revenue website as well. There's basic steps that have to be taken, and if we move on to the next slide, the first one of those is that a customs declaration will always be required. Now, we wouldn't expect that really anyone on this call perhaps would be doing their customs formalities themselves. Normally people engage an agent because it is quite a complex thing. But even if you're using an agent, you'll need to provide information to allow the agent to make the declaration on your behalf. And the key information is the commodity code. And this is why we talk about goods. There's a thing called the combined nomenclature, and it has thousands upon thousands of commodity codes, and you will find horses in there, and there'll be a unique 10-digit numeric number associated with it, and that's the number that needs to go on to the import declaration. Now, I'm talking about import, but I'm aware that in a lot of cases, the horse won't actually be being imported. It'll be only coming in or leaving temporarily. So I will cover that now in a minute. But in addition, if the horse is coming from GB into Ireland, in addition to this import declaration, you'll need a safety and security declaration. And then for the opposite way, if you're exporting, you can do an export declaration combined with your safety and security information. And then on the next slide, all goods now coming into Ireland or leaving Ireland by ro-ro ferry, which I understand is how horses travel. They'll be in their horse box and the driver will be with them. So they'll be going on to a ferry and they need to create what we're calling a pre-boarding notification. So this links all of the information together and provides it to revenue in advance of that journey so that we can do as much as possible of the documentary checks that need to be carried out in advance of the arrival of the horse. Where you're making an electronic declaration, you get assigned what's called a master reference number. And it's a unique identifier basically for the declaration. And you use that to create a pre-board notification on the revenue website at the link there, revenue.ie/ro-ro. If you're using an ATA carnet for a temporary admission, you will need to contact that email address to customs PBN at revenue.ie and provide the information necessary to create the PBN, and we'll talk you through what needs to be done there. If we move on to the next one, it's probably not so relevant, but I did put it in there in case anyone on the call is going to be moving, say, equipment rather than an actual horse. Then they will probably use an electronic declaration. They probably won't do any of the temporary admission or anything like that. And that link just allows you to check the routing information for your declaration. And there's 3 possible routings, green, orange or red, but where a live animal is concerned, and Catherine kind of touched on this already, if it's a live animal coming in from GB into Ireland, they will always need to bring that live animal to the live animal BCP. So just to be aware of that there will always be some stop required in the port of arrival when the horse comes into Ireland. I'll move on to the next slide and just talk about temporary admission, because there was a lot of questions in what you sent on, Wendy, about this. So if the horse is just going temporarily, say, from Ireland to GB for a race and then coming back, what are the possibilities there? So temporary admission, it does what it says on the tin. It allows you to bring goods temporarily into the EU without paying any import duties or VAT. It's all suspended. And it can be done in a couple of ways, depending on whether the person who's responsible for the customs formalities is established in the EU or whether they're using an ATA carnet. And we'll look at each in a bit more detail now. So the next slide just gives you an idea of the type of goods that normally would be moved under an ATA carnet, but we have confirmed that horses can move under that carnet as well. And if you just move on, the main requirement, and I'm flying through these so that we have more time where people will be more interested. The main condition with a temporary import made using an electronic declaration is that the goods must leave the Union within a 2-year time frame. So in this example, what we're showing is a horse that came in on the 6th of October 2020 must be re-exported no later than the 5th of October 2022. That's to qualify for a temporary importation. The next slide just shows that the goods must stay the same as they were. Obviously for a horse, that's probably not a problem. If the mare that comes in and goes back out in foal, or the opposite way around, if a mare goes out and comes back and is in foal, we consider that to be the same, to be an unaltered horse. It's the same horse that went out. But just to say that even if you're using an electronic declaration for temporary admission, there is a security required in the form of either a bank guarantee or a cash deposit, and we will get on to how you value the horse for that purpose now in a minute. And the guarantee or cash deposit is required to secure any potential duties or potential VAT. So in the event that the horse isn't re-exported, we would hold on to that deposit to claim any duties or VAT that would have been payable. So if it's a person in Ireland, say, temporarily importing the horse from GB, then they can apply using the customs decision system to be authorised for temporary admission. And in that case, they give a comprehensive guarantee as to security. And it means basically, sorry, Wendy, we've moved on to the next slide. I didn't ask, sorry. And basically what that means is the comprehensive guarantee is in place, and we don't actually deduct the amount or the value of the horse each time. The comprehensive guarantee is just sitting there in the background in case anything happens. So you can apply for that using the CDS portal on our website, and there's details available there. And you also can apply for the comprehensive guarantee in the same way. So you have to, the other option then, if you're not wanting to be fully authorised, and which is on the next slide now, you can just say you're doing a one-off, and the horse, you're bringing in a horse on a one-off basis temporarily. You don't need to be authorised for the procedure. You can simply get a declaration made out availing of the temporary admission procedure. But if you do that, then a deposit is required to cover the potential duty or the VAT, and it would be taken at import, and it would be refunded then when the horse is re-exported, and provided it's re-exported within the 2 years. And in that instance, an Irish VAT registered importer could avail of postponed accounting for VAT as well. So the deposit would have to cover the duty element. And then the final option on the next slide, it probably, in my opinion, it's probably the easiest one, because where you're talking about, and Catherine covered this really well in her presentation, there's the EU requirements and there's the GB requirements. So it's the same with a customs formality. There'll always be an export formality from the EU and then an import formality in GB, and vice versa when the horse would be coming back. But the ATA carnet is an internationally recognised paper-based kind of declaration. and it covers both the EU and the non-EU requirements. It's valid for a year, so it can be used for as many movements backwards and forwards as you need in a year. And the thing with this one, though, is that there are two payments required, okay? So there's the issuing fee for the carnet itself, and then there's the security deposit, much like we spoke about with the electronic version. And the security deposit then is refundable once the carnet is returned to the issuing authority and it's properly stamped. So the Dublin Chamber of Commerce is the authorising body in Ireland, and their contact information is on that slide there if you're interested in using the ATA carnet procedure. And with the ATA carnet, because it's paper-based, it will require, but you'll be required to stop anyway with a live animal, it will require a stop in the port so that the horse or the goods, I was almost defaulting back into saying goods, so that the horse and the documentation can be examined and stamped by a customs officer. And basically that's the verification that the same horse that came in is the same horse that's leaving, and it's that will allow you to claim your money back from your authorising body. On the next slide, returned goods relief will be of interest to the Irish exporter who's bringing the horse to Great Britain temporarily, say for a race or whatever the case may be. And what you'd need to do in that scenario, I did mention you need export declarations. So you'd be lodging your export declaration, but you'd be indicating on that declaration that you're only temporarily exporting the horse, and no financial deposit or guarantee is required, but that's on the export side. Obviously, bear in mind there will be an import requirement or a temporary import requirement for GB, and they may require a deposit. But when the horse then is being re-imported back into Ireland, you can submit a re-import declaration claiming relief, returned goods relief, because it's the same horse that left temporarily and that is now coming back. And of course the horse must return in the same condition, and as I mentioned earlier, a horse coming back in foal is considered to be in the same condition, and it must be re-imported within 3 years of the date of export. You will also need to provide the original export declaration as proof that it was the same horse that was exported from Ireland. And VAT relief would only apply if the horse is re-imported by the same person that originally exported it. So just a few things that need to be considered there. And then on the next slide, it's just showing those requirements, your export declaration and your re-import declaration. And just to be aware that return goods relief is applied for on a standard import declaration. So the import declaration then is subject to full import formalities, including any risk analysis, examination, or anything like that. And obviously then there's the phyto or sanitary and phytosanitary requirements attaching to that as well. The next I'm almost covered with the procedures, and then we'll go on to how you value the horse. The last procedure that I just want to touch on really quickly is horses that are moving through Great Britain with a end destination somewhere else in Europe. And I have to start off by saying the preferable option here, if it's possible at all, is to not use this route. A direct ferry route to the continent means that from a customs perspective, there are no customs formalities at all. The horse can simply board with whatever the health certification requirements are from an agriculture perspective. So from a customs perspective, there would be no customs formalities if a direct route is used. If the horse is going to move through Great Britain to go on then into France or the Netherlands or wherever the case may be, then it must move under the customs transit procedure. And that allows union goods, so EU goods, to move through a third country and not be treated as an import or an export. It's treated as if the movement happened within the EU, provided that it moves under the transit procedure. And if we move on to the next slide, I'll just say that this procedure also always requires a comprehensive guarantee. And the comprehensive guarantee is always required to be with a bank, a financial institution, for the purposes of transit. Now, I mentioned import and export declarations earlier on, but from a customs perspective, a movement under transit isn't considered an import or an export. So a declaration in this instance would be made into the NCTS system. I've just mentioned really briefly offices of departure, transit and destination. So when you're leaving Ireland, that's your office of departure, and there's formalities to be completed, and they're generally done electronically. The office of transit formalities would be completed when you arrive into GB, and again, they should be done digitally as the information we have at the moment from HMRC. Again, there will be an office of transit when you arrive in France, because Calais is not an office of destination for transit procedures, and you would need to then close the movement out at an office of destination away from the port of Calais. And it's only when all those formalities are completed that your comprehensive guarantee is released and becomes back available to you. And just to mention with this one that a physical copy of the transit accompanying document must move with the horse. We'll move on to the valuation, and in a lot of the scenarios that were posed in advance of this event, there's no actual sale involved, because generally for normal goods, there's 6 methods of valuation that apply, and they apply in the hierarchical order that they appear on the slide. Now, I'm not going to go into the 6 different ones, because in the case of horses, the method 1, the transaction value method, cannot be used, so because there is no sale. So if you move on to the next slide, for horses in temporary admission, again, there's no sale, so you can't use that. The transaction value of identical goods, that could be tricky as well, because obviously a horse, depending on whether it's a race horse or depending on whether it's a pet, there may not be a comparable identical good to use a value of. So the one that we see as the most appropriate would be the transaction value of similar goods methods. And basically what that does is, obviously there will be some differences in the types of goods being valued, but they should have much of the same characteristics. And basically, in essence, what we're saying here is it will be the market value of the horse will be the value that you'll calculate to base your guarantee amount on. So that's the customs things, and I'm aware we did just a real whistle through. I'm going to hand over to Humphrey to talk quickly about VAT implications, and then we're available to take questions. So thanks very much.
Thank you, Celine.
Hi, my name is Humphrey O Sullivan, and I'm working in the VAT Interpretation section for revenue. And I've been given about 5 minutes to talk about it. Or give you an overview.
Don't press yourself, Humphrey. Don't press yourself.
Okay. Of how VAT, just an overview of how VAT is applied to import and export of goods. And in saying that, as the other speakers have mentioned, we don't specify specific goods in our website. Import and exports of goods includes horses, and the principles that apply to the normal export of goods is equally applies to horses. As a starting point for exports, the VAT that we apply here is an EU tax, and it's applied in the same way across all EU member states. And therefore, an export for VAT purposes has to be to a country outside the EU. And that's what we're talking about here. If you, the non-EU countries then are referred to, I think someone else has mentioned that, as third countries for the purposes of VAT. So obviously from the beginning of the year, Great Britain became a third country, which is why we're all sitting here on a Tuesday night. But the rules relating to the imports and export of goods, they haven't changed. It's just the situation regarding Britain has changed. So we won't necessarily be changing anything on our websites. Those rules still apply. If we take it from the point of view then of a trader in Ireland for an export point of view, if you're registered for VAT and you're exporting goods, then the rate of VAT that applies in Ireland to that supply of goods is the 0 rate. You're not charging VAT. But in order to apply the zero rate, you will have to provide evidence of the good being dispatched to a third country. This will maybe done by audit or maybe done on request from a district, but you just need to retain that documentary proof. In relation to the export, as a trader in the state and a VAT registered person, you still retain all your entitlements to deductibility in relation to supplies of those goods and in relation to your business leading to the supply of those goods. If you're not registered for VAT and you're selling a horse or you're exporting a horse to a third country, then you don't really have to consider VAT, because it just VAT won't apply to the sale of that horse from this state. You'll have issues in Great Britain or in the third country, but not in Ireland. At the point then where the good is actually imported into the third country, what happens then is that good and the horse in question becomes subject to the VAT legislation or the VAT provisions in that country. And that includes the rate of VAT that will apply to that horse on importation into that country. And obviously we're talking here mainly about Great Britain, but you'll have other territories, the States and Dubai, as I mentioned earlier, and they will have their own maybe general service taxes or whatever. And you will have to make specific inquiries about the rate of VAT that will apply on the importation of a good into a third country. When a good is imported into Great Britain, I mean, their VAT is basically based on ours and has the same principles still there. So any VAT that's paid on import into Great Britain by a VAT registered person can obviously be reclaimed by that VAT registered person. This is on the assumption that that horse is used for its taxable supplies, If you're selling horses to a private individual or an unregistered person and it's imported into Great Britain, then that private person will not be able to claim the VAT back. It'll just have to suffer the costs. Imports like exports, again, you're talking about third countries. To be an import, it must be brought in from outside the EU. From our point of view, the VAT is payable at the point of entry, and obviously that will be collected by customs. Where goods are imported by someone who isn't registered for VAT, then the VAT will be payable at the point of entry, and it's just costs to the importer. He can't reclaim that VAT. A VAT registered person who is importing goods, including a horse, I have to keep reminding myself to say including a horse, well, where you're importing goods, you can pay VAT at the point of entry, but you can also avail of new postponed accounting provisions, which allow you to account for that VAT on your VAT return, on your normal VAT return. So if you choose to do that, then you just return it as an amount due on your VAT return. The VAT registered person then on importing the goods, in either case, whether they pay it at customs or pay it on the postponed accounting, can reclaim the VAT subject to the normal rules regarding reclaiming VAT in the state. The last thing I want to talk then is really about Northern Ireland. The position of Northern Ireland obviously hasn't changed because of the Northern Ireland Protocol, and really you will still be considered to be making inter-community acquisitions and inter-community supplies when trading with Northern Ireland. And again, the rules in relation to that are available on our website. They're basically the same as applied to Great Britain before Brexit. One of the questions related to horses sold from Northern Ireland which are transported through this state for export, and there would be no VAT implications in those circumstances in the state. It would be just a straight run through and an export. And then finally, just want to mention the last slide in our presentation. They put two links up there. The first link is relates to a website content that we have in relation to supplying goods and services to and from abroad. And again, whereas the horses aren't mentioned specifically, it's not, the horses are the same rules and the same VAT principles apply to exporting and importing horses, and inter-community supplies and inter-community acquisition of horses. So the information will be available for you there on our website. Just realise that a horse is a good for VAT purposes. And then the second link I put up is we have a VAT rate database on our website, and it provides a search facility for the VAT rates on a large variety of goods and services, some of which, like in insemination services or semen or other horse products related to the equine industry. The rate of VAT on those services are available on that website. And when you're importing a good into Ireland, the rate of VAT chargeable on that import is the same rate as would apply to the goods as if they were sold here. So you know what rate of VAT would be charged. Thank you, and thanks, Wendy, for organising this.
Yes, it's intense. It is intense.
Wendy, could I just come back in for a second, because I was keeping an eye on the Q&As, and I think I've caused some confusion about the different timelines. So just to recap really quickly, a temporary admission using an electronic declaration. So the time frame for that is that the horse could stay in the EU for 2 years and then must be re-exported. Using the ATA carnet, it's valid for 12 months. And then the third thing that we spoke about was a horse that temporarily leaves the EU must come back in order to claim the returned goods relief, must come back within 3 years. So there's actually 3 different timelines depending on which type of declaration is being made. So apologies for the confusion that I caused, and thanks for picking it up in the Q&A so that I had the opportunity to clarify. Thanks, Wendy.
No problem at all. Look, it is difficult to wrap the head around all of this. Catherine, if you wish, you can turn your video back on and your mute button off. But I'll direct a couple of questions first to revenue. There were some questions that have come in that, is my company number, a limited company number, is that my EORI number?
In essence, it will be, but you need to make an application to be able to use it as an EORI number. It's usually your VAT number. It's normally identical, but you still have to apply. And once you apply for that, it automatically sets you up a trader account, so that if you do have a comprehensive guarantee or anything like that, or if import duties or VAT are actually payable, then that's how they're paid. It's through that account. So you do still need to register for the EORI number, even though it will be the same number.
Another question is, does having an EORI number mean you don't have to pay VAT?
No, if you're a VAT registered company, and Humphrey can speak more about this, VAT, I suppose the difference now is that VAT is due at the point of importation now for anything that's purchased from the UK. And there's different ways of deferring the payment of it. So you can either do that availing of postponed accounting for VAT, which came in for VAT registered companies from the 1st of January. There's a thing called a deferred payment account, but again, that would require a comprehensive guarantee, but it could be useful if somebody, say, is going to apply for a temporary admission authorisation. They're going to need it anyway. And then obviously there'd be zero rated goods dependent as well.
And what about the situation with services? So, for example, somebody here is providing a service, be that they're rearing an animal for somebody who's in the UK, or they're an Irish-based rider here that's producing, training, or competing an animal on behalf of somebody in the UK. What is the situation there? So, in other words, services against product.
So there are different rules completely in relation to services. They're not imports or exports. Mm-hmm. There's a general rule that where your business is supplying a service to another business, then it's where the customer is based, is the place of supply, and the VAT rules there will apply. Now, this is international, or this is trade with third countries and within the EU. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. You mentioned there stabling as horse, I think, or
yeah, if it was a situation where you were providing a livery service for somebody, or
then that service is based on the premises or the land on which the service is being provided, and services that relate to movable goods like that use, they're they're chargeable where those goods are, where the immovable good, where the property is located. So if you're providing a livery service in Ireland, the VAT will be chargeable in Ireland, the same as any other. If the livery service is provided from a premises in England, or if you're providing livery services from a premises in England, that's where the supply of those services will take place. It's quite difficult and complex with supplies of services, because you can get mixed supplies and you can get innumerable different types of supplies.
Okay.
I think for the equine industry, you're talking about services relating to that property, or you're talking about services relating to just under the general rule. But
okay.
I mean, you can always contact your own section with your tax inspector with individual queries on that.
Okay. Okay. Look at the other area that is posing a lot of difficulties, I think, from feedback is the issue of getting a customs agent, of actually securing a customs agent. Is there any advice on that at all?
Not really. We're aware it's a pinch point. It's something we raised with other departments maybe, you know, a year and a half ago, 18 months ago maybe. And on foot of that, there was a lot of customs training and grants for customs agents to take on new agents and to increase capacity in that sector. But because, and it's understandable, because of the multiple different Brexit dates and the uncertainty about when or if it would ever actually happen, the capacity hasn't grown sufficiently. So there is demand, and we're aware of that. For that reason, an ATA carnet might be more preferable, because you wouldn't need an agent. But also then, if you're going to engage with the AIS IT system, there is a trader portal, but even to start to do that would be extremely difficult, because we're into questions about commodity codes and origin and all sorts of really tricky questions. So look, other than to say we're aware of the pressure point and that those grants are still available, there's not a whole lot we can say on it, I'm afraid.
Now, I know in your presentation you referred in relation to the valuation of horses, and you know, obviously for the most part you're referring to those that were temporary movements. Obviously there is the situations where there's the permanent moves, there's the sale, so there is a value attached to that. Are there consequences if in that scenario somebody undervalues?
Yeah, I mean, like we do carry out checks on a whole range of things, including undervaluation. And look, people will make mistakes, and we do recognise that mistakes can happen, and that would be the kind of approach we take. So generally what we'd do in that case is we would do some sort of either clearance check or post-clearance check, and we'd identify that the horse in this case has been undervalued, and we would raise a charge with you to get the additional amount. But in general, that's our approach. We appreciate that people are new to this, they're trying to get things right, and we want to help in as far as possible.
Okay. Catherine, if I might just throw one to you here. There's been quite a few questions, I suppose, about the transporter authorisation, and you know, obviously there's lots of different scenarios in that. There's non-commercial transport situation where people are heading over to a show in the UK, or there's the other, you know, the other side of the coin, where there is the commercial activity, or the commercial transporters. Can you get a lorry that's approved in the north? Can you do that as opposed to over in the UK? And you know, how do you go about getting authorisation in the situation where you need it?
Okay, just to clarify, I see from the questions that are coming in, there's quite a lot coming in on the transport authorisation side. The points that I made earlier are in relation to if you already have an existing Type 2 authorisation, you need to now get a Great Britain issued Type 2 authorisation and vehicle approval if you're going to or through Great Britain. Similarly, if you're going to or through Northern Ireland. But a lot of the questions coming in tonight are a private person, individual with their own pony asking, and the answer is transport authorisation, vehicle approval and certificates of competency are required if you are moving horses in connection with an economic activity. And that's not just as straightforward as if I'm selling or buying horses. It could be if you're going to an event and there's prize money associated with it. If you have a pony, but someone is taking it on your behalf to Great Britain and you're paying them, that may be classed as an economic activity. So that's why I've given you the 2 key emails for Dublin and for Great Britain to clarify in advance if you need to be authorised, what you need to do. And equally, you can contact Department of Agriculture, Environment and Rural Affairs in relation to Northern Ireland and the services they provide up there to provide the authorisation. There's a couple of, another interesting question came in tonight. Somebody asked, are these requirements that we're talking about of Ireland's making? And I just want to clarify the import requirements that we're expecting the UK and GB horses to comply with when we're importing them are not of our making. They're dictated by the Commission and the EU because, as I explained earlier, the UK is no longer in the EU, and the export requirements that you will have to comply with to export your horses to Great Britain are not of our making. They are import requirements set down by the UK government. So they've set their import requirements and the EU has set our import requirements.
I'll return to the others, and I am going to have to close shortly, but just in relation to horses that were shipped before Brexit and now need to return or will need to return, can they return as re-imports when there was actually no customs entry submitted for export because it wasn't required at the time? And if so, what will customs require as proof of export?
Yeah, so thankfully, actually, this kind of scenario was anticipated, and the Commission guidance that was published about returned goods relief does apply for a horse that was exported. Well, it wouldn't have been exported at the time, obviously, but that moved into Great Britain before the end of the transition period and then comes back, and it's that return goods relief that we were speaking about. So really what will be required will still be an import declaration claiming the relief for return goods relief, and the proof that would be required in that instance would be as much commercial documentation as you have basically available to show that the horse did leave before or was in GB before the end of the transition period, and that it's the same horse that has come back. So I can't specifically say a certain document will do it, but as much documentation as you would have that would show that that's what happened.
And just as a matter of interest with the return of goods relief, how long is it going to, or do you think it's going to take to turn those around?
Well, that's the 3-year time frame. So anything that was in GB within 3 years of the 31st of December.
No, I mean in the sense of when somebody brings on and they want to get their guarantee money that they've put down on an animal that has come back in on a temporary, that went out on a temporary import. How long will it take to redeem their
I think we're confusing two issues, because if it went out before the end of the transition period, there wouldn't have been.
Sorry, I'm skipping. I'm actually skipping. I actually skipped away from that. Yeah.
So in that instance, there wouldn't be a bond, but you make the claim for the relief from the import duties, and you can provide all the support and documentation. And if we're happy with the documentation, then you'll never get charged the import duty. That's a good thing. If it's a temporary, or if it's a standard export, followed then by an import declaration claim and the return goods relief, you would in the AIS system, you'll be able to attach the original export declaration as the proof. So provided all the paperwork is in order, it's a documentary check. Hopefully we'd have it done before the horse ever arrives. But these are all systematic things, and they generally only take seconds. We just can't make the result of our analysis available until the horse actually arrives.
Okay, sorry now for my confusing and jumping. I'm trying to get too much in.
No problem.
Catherine, I'll just come back to you for 1 second. If a horse is brought over to the UK for competition purposes, do I need a vet cert to come back into Ireland, and will I need to organise blood testing? This with registered animals?
Well, there's a series of certificates required, and there is a specific certificate for re-entry of horses, of registered horses that are returning, that have travelled over from Ireland to Great Britain for the purpose of racing, cultural, or competition or cultural events. They may re-enter Ireland, but they will need a re-entry certificate, and that's conditional on them being a registered horse attending for one of those 3 different reasons and only being in GB for a period of 30 days or less, there is a specific certificate, and you won't have blood testing and the same residency requirements as you will for the other certificates that we mentioned.
I have just another question now to go back in relation to customs and so forth. If there's a situation where you have a horse that goes over to the UK to be sold in a public auction, for example, and it's unsold over there, so it went out, I suppose, with the hope that it would be a permanent, but it's unsold and it has to come back, so it has actually turned into a temporary, or the scenario where you have exported a private sale. So that has gone out and it is intended to be a permanent export, but things have gone awry and the horse is now to return back to Ireland. What happens in those scenarios?
Yeah, and that probably kind of somewhat relates to the previous one. Again, it would be similar. All right, you wouldn't have indicated on the export declaration that it was a temporary export because you would have thought it was a sale. But you'd still be claiming the return goods relief and need the export declaration as the proof. Now, you asked how long would it take. I suppose we might have a few more questions in that kind of scenario, but it would be the same or similar process anyway.
Yeah, and if, for example, you had the situation where you had a pony or a horse that had went out to compete in the UK and it's sold before its return date.
So again, in that case, it would become an export, and I suppose the one good thing in all of this, there's no customs duties or VAT on an export. Well, VAT, sorry, I take that back. I'll let Humphrey talk about VAT, but there's no customs duty payable at export. So from an EU perspective, you would have satisfied your requirements just by doing your export. From a UK requirement, it will depend on how you've brought the horse into the UK, because obviously if you used, say, the ATA carnet for a temporary admission and now suddenly it's an import, they will require an import declaration. If you've done temporary admission, then using an electronic declaration, because the processes should be the exact same, a reflection of each other, but just on the UK systems rather than on the EU one, then obviously if the horse doesn't leave within the 2-year time frame, in that case they'll have taken your deposit, your money will be there, or you'll have to amend your declaration so that to indicate that it's a full import, and then you're getting into a whole range of complications, unfortunately, about who's responsible for the customs formalities on either side, so that makes it even trickier. But just in general, there's ways to work through those issues.
Okay, so look, I'm watching the clock. It really has beaten us tonight. I knew we would need the extra time. It's clear there's an awful lot of questions on this area, and answers can be absolutely complex, not always simple in their delivery or in their interpretation afterwards. A lot of detail has been imparted tonight. I believe most people will need to actually listen back. Very little of the change in many ways is palatable. Some aspects will improve as solutions are found, but it is a new era, and the changes that have occurred demand a whole new level of preparation, no matter which side of this we're looking at. There is an absolute necessity to be familiar with all the various steps that are required. I think for private operators that are maybe concerned as to their skills or ability to navigate the process, it might be advisable to consider engaging experts to help with some of that heavy lifting. Both departments have very much stressed this evening that they're available to take queries submitted through their email portals. In the coming days, I know that I will receive documents from both of you to be able to disseminate, and I appreciate that very much. And I know that there's people that have submitted questions here this evening and we feel that they're not as yet answered. We will pass those along, all right? An awful lot of work has and continues to be undertaken by staff in all departments, and it is a very challenging period. It's challenging of itself, but it's also challenging with COVID situation thrown in on top of it as well. I do acknowledge the stress and the anxiety, I suppose, that is being experienced by all who are at the cold front of navigating all of these new changes at every level. I do think it's really important that the communication channels are kept open There is a page on our own website that is dedicated to Brexit, and I'll endeavour to keep that updated as far as possible. The follow-up documents will come, and I will disseminate those. And there will be aspects within those that just time has not allowed us to cover everything. I think there's been a lot done this evening, but you know, it's impossible to cover all and tick all boxes. I just maybe offer maybe a quick minute to each of you if there's a closing comment or remark or a piece of advice that you would offer to listeners. I'll come to yourself maybe first, Catherine.
Oh, thanks, Wendy, and thanks for this evening and to everybody who attended tonight. I suppose really the key take-home message I would say is be prepared and prepare early. The sooner you start, the better you'll be able to engage with the process and get to grips. And as I say, we in the Department of Agriculture have a number of dedicated teams, and we really do want to hear from you. We certainly address all the questions that came in tonight, and we hope that we can help you and assist you as you navigate the Brexit processes in the year ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. Ladies first, I think, Celine.
Thanks, Wendy, and just to say it's great. Everyone was really engaged on the webinar tonight. So that's really good. And look, we're aware we just did a whistle-stop tour of everything. So do please engage with the longer webinars that are on the website. And every topic that I cover tonight has reams of information on it. So unfortunately, you won't spot horses mentioned anywhere, but anywhere that it says goods, you can assume it applies to horses. And as I think I mentioned at the start of it, we are trying to work up a short paper dedicated to horse movements, so hopefully that will help as well, and we should have that in the coming days.
Thank you very much, Celine. And Humphrey.
Well, I'd just like to again direct people to the website pages on on trade services and goods to and from other countries. It covers intercommunity acquisitions in Northern Ireland, it covers imports and exports, and also the section on VAT rates, which are the rates which will apply to imports, VAT payable on imports. So it really would be the quickest way for yourself and to look at them and just be confident and comfortable in the fact that goods are goods from the point of view of VAT. It doesn't discriminate.
Yes. Even though our goods have a heartbeat, as we say.
Yes.
Yeah.
But that's the VAT and the directive, and our VAT legislation doesn't discriminate from that point of view.
Yeah, it's a hard pill to swallow in that sense. Yeah. My sincere thanks to all three of you for your time and most importantly for the information that you've provided. Thanks to participants who have endured the course with us appreciatively. It is not easy information to take in. You know, it is hard for everybody, I think. I do hope that this webinar has helped to contribute to understanding in some way. And, you know, it is part of the journey. It is an evolving journey, and more information will come, and some things will change as we go forward. The next Let's Talk Equine webinar is on the 2nd of March, on Tuesday, the 2nd of March, same time, same place. And until then, I say a big thank you to you all and a good night from here. Good night, everybody.
Good night. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.